Introducing Nitin Pandey, founder and CEO of ParentTune, a leading parenting community platform. Nitin will discuss the significance of nurturing emerging aspects of design and the importance of inclusive design for all genders and minorities. Join me in welcoming Nitin Pandey for his valuable insights on designing with empathy and inclusivity.
In understanding what do you need to keep in mind to do user-centered research, especially when designing for something which is more inclusive, something which can be used by diversity and minority groups. Now, this story is of a British student who was training to become a doctor. And the student, when was getting trained, couldn't help notice that there were all these training videos which he and his colleagues, his peer group were all learning from to become doctors. And he noticed that all these videos had white patients. And something just didn't seem right to him. And so he went to his profs and asked this question that, Prof, why do we have all the videos in, all kind of trainings in with white patients? There must be some reason. And the profs actually could not justify any reason. They actually, it made them sit up, and there were some profs from various ethnicities, and they were also like, okay, yeah, I mean, it makes sense. So the student said, how about changing this? And they started designing training videos for doctors with various ethnicity patients, because eventually they would be treating patients with various ethnicities, and they called this project Mind the Gap. This has brought in a tremendous change, a big shift in how students now become doctors in Britain. Now, the reason I'm telling you this story is this story started with the core ethos of being a designer, which is empathy. So, rule number one, when you're doing user research for anything, going forward, you should first start by training your mind. Now, how do you do that? There are two key things there. First is you need to be self-aware about your own biases. Consciously as well as unconsciously, we may have some biases. We need to leave them behind. Now, how do you do that? You can only do that if you think like a child. How children don't have any biases, how they don't treat people differently because of how they look, and things like that. So just be childlike and leave your biases behind when you start designing for your next project. The second thing which you can do is bring in very strong intention of designing for diversity. Yeah, intention. Now, let me tell you how do you do that. Just look around at your own workplace, your own house, your teams, and look around and find out ways you can make these places more inclusive. It could be a very small thing. I mean, I was just talking to a D&I champion and asked that, are your washrooms like really, really inclusive? And she said, like, how? I said, you would tell me that. And she explained to me that, I'll give you a small example. Our washrooms had the classic diaper changing, station. But in that diaper changing station, when a mom goes and uses it, one of the biggest challenge which she faces is that she doesn't have hooks and places and storage to keep her phone, whatever she's wearing, if it is winters, then hanging her coat and things like that before she starts changing the diaper of the child. So what they did was really interesting. They came up with this storage place wherein when the mom starts changing a diaper or a parent starts changing the diaper, they would be able to keep their things, hang their things, and then they could go on and do this entire step. So I want to tell you another story, which is the story of a tourist who was coming in from Japan and wasn't very comfortable in English. And here is the tourist, really young, college going. She enters McDonald's and she looks at the menu and she can't read, right? But guess what? On the menu, there were these two images, which was one was for crispy chicken and one was for grilled chicken. And the images were so clear that she knew that if she wanted crispy chicken, she could just point to that image and tell the person who was taking her order. I want to tell you how your role is really important, just not as a designer. Now, it is you who decides how someone will feel when they interact with that particular product, service, or place. So your role is just not of designing that product, and I know that you're already aware about that, but it is about how someone will end up feeling after they have used the product or service, right? So, as a designer for a free world, what is our biggest responsibility? Your biggest responsibility is to design in a manner that the users from minority segments, various genders, everyone feels cared for, feels that they were being thought of while this product or service was being created or curated. And if you can do that, you would have not only created a superb product, but you would have set the right foundation for a great user experience. And that great user experience would improve the world. So, what's the third thing you keep in mind while you do this user experience research? Of course, you observe and research for various user types. But while you're doing that, think of the person who would least add value to your design. For example, if you are designing for a medical product, you may want to talk to the insurance company as well, or someone from the insurer side as well. And let me tell you how these things can, really matter. The insurance company would tell you what are the various steps which are really important for them, and what are the criteria on the basis of which they would pass an insurance cover. And sometimes that can be really important, and the user may not be aware about that. But if you can factor that in the user experience and create nudges or create prompts, then that can really help a user get that insurance going, right? So observe how they are using your product or products in your segment. Make a note of those edge cases, and that brings me to the next step, which is talk to a diversity champion. So you can't know who all could be possible users or what would various user types possibly be experiencing in a short time. Suppose you have a tight timeline and you still want to make that product really inclusive. Identify a few diversity champions, if possible, in the same segment where you are creating a product or service for. So, for example, if you're designing for a hospital, or let's say for health tech, make sure that you talk to a DNI champion in healthcare or from a healthcare company, and they would bring you different perspective. For an example, I spoke to someone who works in the medical device industry, and how they did research and came up with ways and design solutions which could be used by left-handed doctors, support staff. And while they did that research, they spoke to not just doctors, but nurses, insurers, caregivers, patients, to be patients, both right-handed and left-handed, and they came up with these insights, and that made a big difference. And today they are also educating the procurement specialists at various hospitals about this, because they are the ones who are ordering these products. So another example is of LinkedIn, which has now given its users the choice to specify their gender and the pronoun by which they wish to be called. One of the things you need to do is research around personas. So when you're thinking about your personas, don't stop at the usual personas. Go ahead and look for various types of possible users. You will find some apps have gone on, and some public places have gone on to make personas and signs and even emoticons which have disability being taken care of, various ethnicities being taken care of, pregnant women being taken care of, right? So this brings out diversity to not just the product and service, but also to the entire place and to the entire product, right? People get that much more sensitive. They are much more appreciative. Keep these three things in mind. First, how can you bring in inclusivity in your intentions, right? It can only happen when you are looking around every day and looking at places which you are part of. Are there any personal biases guiding your decisions, especially design decisions? To drop them, think like a child, research passionately, leave all your biases behind just like a child, curious and full of wonder. That would really help you. And the third thing I would say is, how can you engage and support designers like yourself, women, people of color, and underrepresented minorities with your work? After all, as a designer, you have the power to decide how these beautiful people will feel when they interact with your product, right? Remember, diversity could look like a barrier or it could bring forward inclusivity. It's all in your hearts and hands, my designer friend. So it all goes on you, and you would decide how would people feel while interacting with your product. Lastly, I would just say and would want to leave a message that when you design for a minority, you are unknowingly disrupting things for better. A better solution, a better experience, and moreover, a better and compassionate world. So go ahead, keep that in mind and design for these beautiful people. Thank you.